Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Annie, and in this video I will be talking about Stephen King's Night Shift. And this will be part 4 of my report card on Stephen King's Night Shift. I have decided to make 5 different videos, and in each video I will be sharing 4 stories from the novel Night Shift. In this video I will be talking about the stories The Lawnmower Man, Quitters Inc., I Know What You Need, and the infamous Children of the Corn. So without further ado, here is part 4 of my report card on Stephen King's Night Shift. So the first story that I will be talking about is the story The Lawnmower Man. And I have to really say that this has to be the strangest story I've ever read by any author. It's just the weirdest story. It's about this guy, and he's let his lawn grow really high. He's been lazy about mowing it, and about calling. There's a teenage boy that mows his lawn every year, and he's just been blowing off calling the kid. And the neighbors are making jokes about it and making comments because his lawn's so high, it's like a meadow, and it's like an eyesore and whatnot. And so while his wife and daughter are out, he decides to surprise them by getting the lawn mowed. And he calls the kid that usually does it every summer, and his mom answers and tells Harold that her son has gone off to college. He's like, surprised, like, wow, time goes by fast. So he needs to find somebody else to mow his lawn. So he looks in the phone book or the want ads, and he sees this number for this company, and he calls them, and he's surprised by how professional they are, because he's used to dealing with teenage kids and like having their moms answer the phone for them, not like a secretary and being formal and whatnot. So he was a little surprised at that, but he set up for somebody to come and mow his lawn. Now, like an hour or so later, he gets a knock on the door, and it's somebody from the company that he just called. And he's like, wow, they're really fast. Like, I thought they'd come, later in the week. I didn't know they were going to come an hour, from when I talked to them. So he gets the door, and it's this, fat, gross guy who has got overalls, and he kind of seems a little slow, maybe. So he talks to him and tells him, he's from the lawn care company. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, I'm sorry. And he's like, okay, do your thing. And so Harold goes back inside and drinks a beer and watches a game, and he looks out and he sees the lawnmower riding by itself, and this fat, greasy guy crawling on his hands and knees behind the machine, eating up the grass. He's like, what the fuck? He's freaked out. So he's like not sure if he's seeing like what he's seeing, and he ends up talking to the guy. The guy, I think he faints, and then the guy's like trying to wake him up, and he's like, what is this? What is going on? And he's like, oh, it's this new thing we're trying, and it's working out with other companies. My boss says it, it's really good, and da-da-da. And he's like, whoa, these people are crazy. And so he pretends to be cool with it because he knows that the guy's nuts, and he's like, okay, yeah. And the guy goes back out, and, he's still naked, and he's eating the lawn after the lawnmower. And the guy's just so freaked out by it, and he calls the cops, and he's like, I'd like to report, is it indecent exposure? And there's a naked guy mowing my lawn, and they think it's a joke, but, it's not. And as he's on the phone, he hears the lawnmower, and it seems to be getting closer and closer, like it's inside the house. And the lawnmower man, tells him that, you shouldn't have done that, because he knows that he's, that he called the cops. And so the Lawnmower Man is now inside the house, and obviously he's crazy. I mean, I don't know what I would be thinking. I can't even imagine, because that's so freaky and disgusting, and just, I can't wrap my head around it. It's so bizarre. But the Lawnmower Man ends up inside the house with Harold, and I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't like to spoil the endings, because those are the best parts. And that is all I'm going to say about Lawnmower Man. But definitely, like, way up there on the weirdest stories I've ever read. It's literally about a man who chases after a lawnmower and eats the trimmings of grass naked, mind you. So yeah, definitely weird story. I guess I'd give it a C, because it was just like too weird. It was just too weird. It was like kind of ridiculous, but it definitely was like weird. So it was gross, and I don't know. I liked it, but not my favorite. But yeah, I'd give it a C plus. The next story that I will be talking about is called Quitters Inc. And it's about this middle-aged man, Dick Morrison, and he's a pretty heavy smoker. And he meets an old friend or colleague at an airport, and he sees the guy look so much better than the last time he saw him. He looks like he really has his life together, and things are going really well for him. And he notices that his friend has quit smoking. And he's talking to his friend, and he's like, well, how did you do it? How did you quit? I've tried so many different ways and nothing works. And so his friend's like, oh, here, gives him a business card called Quitters Inc. He's like, I can't really talk too much about it, but give them a call. They saved my life. Like, I have not had a cigarette since I called them, and they really work. So if you really are serious about quitting, give them a call. So later on, Dick decides to check this place out, and there's an address on the card, and he walks there just to, see if it's a joke, or, is it legit, and, to see what it's all about. So he goes, and there's this this guy, and they're really nice to him, but they ask him all these questions, and they make him sign a contract, and they said that they guarantee that if you follow the program, that you will never ever have another cigarette again, guaranteed. They have a 98% success rate. So he's like, okay, I'll come back. If they're like, come back if you're serious and you want to do that. Your first, will begin when you come back. So he's not thinking he's going to go back, but then, thinks about it, and he does. Why not give it a try? Because he does want to quit smoking. So he goes there, and the guy's almost like mafia type of a personality, and he shows Dick this room with a rabbit and a bowl of food, and they're shocking the rabbit and doing testing on it, or it looks like testing. They're shocking the rabbit, and he's like, what is this? Are you going to shock me every time I smoke? Is that what this is about? And they're like, oh, no, of course not. We're going to take your wife, and she's going to come in, and you're going to watch her get shocked, and that's your first offense. So every time he has a cigarette, he has to pay the consequence of seeing a loved one get shocked. So the first offense is his wife getting shocked. I remember the second, but it ends up being his wife gets shocked, he gets shocked, his son, who is handicapped, they send a bunch of goons after him and beat the crap out of him on the third offense. The fourth offense, they just up the shock on whatever, the electrodes or the electricity and when they're shocking them, and the beatings become more severe, and so he has to watch his family get hurt in order to he has to watch his family get hurt if he smokes. So that's his incentive to not have a cigarette. And he lets Dick know that no matter where he is, even if he thinks nobody's watching, somebody's watching. Someone is always watching. So, you know, so Dick's in the car later on. He's, he's been like 3 days or something, or a week without a cigarette. And he's in the middle of traffic, and he's like, no one's like, I'm in the car, no one's gonna see me if I have a drag of a cigarette. And his wife had left a pack of cigarettes in the car, and he's like, I told her to take these out and she didn't, so it's her fault. I'm having a cigarette, F this. So he just takes like 3 drags of the cigarette and puts it out. And then I'm not sure if it was the next day, or when he comes home, his wife's not there, and he gets a phone call to go to the Quitters Inc. place, and they have his wife. They kidnapped her. They put a bag over her head, and so she wouldn't know where they were, and kidnapped her. And they have her in the shock room, and Dick has to watch his wife get shocked, and then he has to tell her all about Quitters Inc. and what it's about. And he thinks she's going to be upset, but she's not, and she's actually glad that he's doing it, and was like, oh, it's worth it if you quit smoking. So there's that, and now he realizes that he can't ever smoke, and that they are really watching everywhere. Somehow they know, even when he's alone, they're there, and he's just really freaked out. They're so strict with their rules that they ask him, they know that you gain weight when you quit smoking, and they give him a weight that he can't go over, and if he goes over that weight, they end up cutting the wife's fingers off, which I thought was gross and pretty horrible. I liked this story though. I thought it was a really cool, idea and twist on quitting smoking, because if anyone's ever smoked or tried to quit smoking, I have. It can be a nightmare. So, why not write a little horror story about it? Because it kind of can be at times. And I liked it. I would give Quitters Inc. on my Stephen King Night Shift report card an A+. The next story I will be talking about is called I Know What You Need. And it's about a college-aged girl named Elizabeth, and she's at the library studying for a really hard sociology exam. And this kind of plain, nondescript guy comes up to her and says, I know what you need. She's like, yeah, right, whatever. And he tells her that, you need a strawberry milkshake or a strawberry ice cream. And she's like, it's like, yeah, I do. And she thinks, I do need that. And so, they end up hanging out and talking. And she's, she thinks she knows him from somewhere, but she doesn't know where she knows him from. And she's trying to figure it out and place him, and she can't. So later on, she talks to her roommate and, describes him. And she's like, oh, that's Edward, I think his name's Edward, and yeah, he's like, whatever. He's just, kind of like a nobody. He's just around, and it doesn't really think much of him. He's kind of just there, one of those people in the background. And so it seems like every time Elizabeth needs something, Edward's around, and he's there, and he knows exactly what she needs, and he ends up helping her take this sociology exam. It just so happens that he took it and he aced it, so he knows exactly what's going to be on the test, and he helps her. And he helps her kind of cheat. I think he gives her a cheat sheet or something, and Elizabeth's roommate's kind of turned off by that. She thinks that's kind of bullshit, and she doesn't like what Edward's all about. She thinks he's a bad dude. But summer comes and Elizabeth has a boyfriend, and they're hanging out and having a good time, and it just so happened that while he was at work, his name's Tony, when Tony was at work, that he got in a horrible accident and died. So Elizabeth has to deal with the death of her boyfriend, and she's, away at her family's place, and she's just really sad. And so who should she bump into but Ed. And he's there, and he heard about Tony dying, and she's like, how did you find out? I didn't tell anybody. And he says, oh, I was working at the matinee in town, and I heard it from your roommate that, what happened. I'm really sorry. I just want to be there for you. And, I know what you need. And, he knows what she needs. And he comforts her, and everything that she wants, he's that. Like, there's nothing that he does that she doesn't want. So she ends up falling in love with him. He manipulates her into falling in love with him. And it's very stalkerish and creepy, and very stalkerish, this story. Obviously, I know what you need. So her roommate, thank God for good friends, because her roommate's like, no, this is not going to work. And she's like, this guy Edward is super sketch, and I'm going to look into him. So she does, and she hires a private investigator, and she digs up all this dirt on him, and she finds out a lot of nasty things, and a lot of things that, her friend should know about. And, I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to ruin the end. But her roommate really steps up and saves the day. And, good friends. It's good to have good people in your corner. That is what I learned from that story. Anyway, I would give I Know What You Need an A-. So the last story that I will be talking about is Children of the Corn. Most people have heard of this story. It's a pretty famous movie. It's been done many, many times. And I think it has, a few different parts to it. But I think the original movie came out in the early 80s. And funny story, when I was little, I'm a lot younger than my brothers and sisters. And like my brother closest to my age is 10 years older than me. So I'm really the baby. And they were teenagers when the movie came out. And I think I was like 5 or something. And it was the first scary movie that I ever saw, and oh my God, I saw it with them, and it scared the shit out of me forever. That movie scared the shit out of me for a long, long time. So, yeah, that's what I went into reading this with, that memory of that movie, and the part where I think it's like the waitress, I'm not sure, but I know she gets her head cut off. So I didn't, was a little nervous about reading the story, but actually the story wasn't, I didn't think, maybe because I'm grown up now and it like, whatever, but it was okay. It didn't scare me as much as I thought it would, but it was still a good scary story. Sometimes I like to write a summary after I read a story so I don't forget important things that I want to talk about. So, I'm going to actually read what I wrote in this case, so I don't leave anything out, because it's a really, really good story. It's iconic, and I don't want to, leave something out that I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to read what I wrote. I'm going to grab my glasses. Okay, and this is what I have for Children of the Corn. Bert and Vicky, a couple having marital problems on the verge of divorce, are driving cross country from Boston to California. they're hoping this trip to visit family will kind of spark things up again, and, you know, spending time alone together will bring them closer. But instead, they're arguing nonstop. And while they're driving through rural Nebraska, they accidentally hit a boy who runs in the middle of the road out of nowhere. And so they stop, and Bert, the husband, you know, goes and checks out the damage and see what happened. And, you know, he sees that the kid is dead, but his neck has been slashed. So that's how he died. He didn't actually kill him. He had been murdered by somebody. And, you know, recently, because he's still running out of the cornfields that are everywhere, miles and miles of corn everywhere, nothing else, just flat road and corn. And Bert is afraid that whoever slashed this kid's throat is in the corn watching them. So he's very afraid, and he puts the boy in the trunk of their car and decides to go to, I guess, like the courthouse or any official building to report the accident, and this kid being hit and being, you know, his neck being slashed. You know, he's trying to do the right thing. But the town that they're driving through is like empty. There's nobody around anywhere. It looks like it's been deserted for years. And it's really creepy. And the radio stations are all static. The only radio station they get is staticky, and it's like a religious, zealot, like very passionate, you know, talk radio, like with very, very like fundamental Christian beliefs and damnation, and talking about the man who walks behind the rows of corn. And it's just really creepy and bizarre. And so they try to locate a place to like a police station to report the accident, but they can't find anything. And his wife notices that the gas station has extremely low prices compared to everywhere else in the world. It's like crazy, like really weird, that it makes no sense why the gas would be the price that it is. It's like, was that price maybe like 10 years ago or something? It was weird to her. She got a really creepy feeling. And she begs Bart to go to another town and to get out of there. And he's, you know, brushes her off and kind of makes her feel like she's like just a crazy bitch, and just like, yeah, she's one of those. And he just ignores her. And they notice this like white church, and the husband wants to go and check it out, and it's the only place that looks like it's been kept up recently. So he goes into the church, and there's like these letters or whatever. That was the sign that was up front, the name of the church, and they're all broken down, and the organ pipes are filled with corn husks. And it's really weird. I'm trying to see what I wrote down here. He thinks he's going to find answers in the church because it's like the only, you know, thing that anybody's been in. So maybe there are people around. And he's a real asshole, though, and he leaves his wife, who begs him not to go in there because she's got a bad feeling, whatever. She doesn't, like, she's afraid to be alone in the car, and I don't blame her. And there's a gun in the car, but still, it's just really creepy. And he just ignores her and pretty much like laughs at her and tells her, I'll be back in 5 minutes. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, honk the horn. And he walks away from her. And when he's in the church, he discovers this book, and this old book, and it's all the birth and deaths and he sees that at 19, everybody dies. Nobody lives past the age of 19, and he discovers that the kids have killed all the adults, and then nobody over 19 is in the town, and it's crazy. So he comes out of the church, and there are these kids everywhere dressed like I would say the Amish or like pilgrims, Quaker, you know, that old like 1600 Puritan style clothing all around. And his wife's still like locked in the car, and he's coming down the steps, and they're everywhere, like surrounding him. And he has a knife, and he tries to attack one of the kids, and he gets him. But while he's doing that, all the other kids have gone to the car, and they've taken his wife, and he doesn't know where they went or where the wife is. And he runs after them, or they're running after him. He's running through the corn, running from these kids who obviously are going to kill him because he's an adult, and he realizes that, he sees that they have murdered literally every single adult in their town. And he knows that they've done something to his wife. They have his wife, whether they're getting a divorce or not. I mean, but I don't even think he cares about that. He cares about the fact that they're coming after him. He's like running from them, and he's running through the corn, trying to hide. And he sees, he thinks he's getting away, but he sees this clearing, and it's a crucified, looks maybe the police officer of the town is crucified on a made out of corn husks, a crucifix made out of corn husks, and like brutally like mutilated and murdered. I'm not gonna spoil it because part of the fun of reading the story. But these kids follow this religion where the god is the man who walks behind the rows, and they communicate with him or something, but they worship him, and they kill any adults, and it's very scary and creepy. And I'm not going to really say anything more about it because you've either seen the movie or you want to read the book, and if I tell the end, then what's the fun in reading it? But it was very suspenseful and creepy, like Village of the Damned creepy with the kids. Yeah, I liked it though. I liked the book better than the movie. I had a better experience with it, obviously. So I would give Children of the Corn an A+. So that is that. So that concludes my part 4 of my Stephen King Night Shift report card. I hope I've entertained you and you have enjoyed this little video. Stay tuned for part 5 and the last segment of my Night Shift report card. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.